Okay. All right. So here is my contact information, edsbackyardbees@gmail.com, and you have my phone number there. I suggest dropping me a note and just kind of letting me know that you were here tonight, and I'll create some mass email list of participants because I have some handouts for you that I will send to you electronically as soon as I know who is all here, and I can put you in one place. So just send me a note at some point tonight, and I'll send out a bunch of extra handouts that might get you started in the right direction here. So, introduction to beekeeping. That's going to be the lady of the hour. That is a honeybee. And we're starting with the very, very basics here. And it's really important to know what a honeybee looks like. Here are a bunch of things that look like honeybees but aren't. And it's really important to know this because honeybees and yellow jackets, if you're not paying attention, look a lot alike. And the yellow jackets are the one that you're going to run over in your yard when you're cutting your grass. And you want to be very well aware that they live in the ground and honeybees don't. When your neighbor comes over to you and says, I've been cutting grass and your bees stung me. No, my bees didn't. If you found them in the hole in the ground, they're the yellow jackets. The bumblebees are the big bulbous ones that make a lot of noise, but are, just largely just cute and have a bark that's worse than their bite. Our lady of the hour is in the bottom right-hand corner. This is the honeybee, scientific name Apis mellifera, which just means bearer of honey. Just want to give you a little bit of information, just some fun facts about bees generally speaking, to kind of let you know what you're getting involved in and see really how amazing these little bugs are. Honeybees are the only insects to produce food for human consumption. And they pollinate about 1/3 of our food. And this is the really important part of why honeybees matter to the planet. To give you a sense of what that means, here's a grocery store that has a bunch of produce in it. These are the products that the bees pollinate, or many of them. If we take away all of the products in this store that the bees pollinate, if we lost the bees, this is what the same shelves would look like. With bees, without bees. With bees, see the woman there on the right side with a shopping cart. Without honeybees, she's gone. So bees are really important. 1 out of every 3 bites of food we take is a result of a bee pollinating a crop. In particular, almond pollination is really important. Most of the almonds in the world grow in California, oddly enough, in a place that has no bees. In order to have almonds, a crop of almonds, you need to have bees. California produces 80% of the world's almonds, and they don't have bees there, so the bees have to be imported. So every year, around this time of year, a little earlier, you have many trucks that are headed west for pollination. They import more than 1 million hives every year just so that we can have an almond crop. And if they didn't ship the hives in, no almonds. Honeybees will fly 10 to 15 trips a day, gathering nectar and pollen. The nectar is their carbohydrate. This is the food that they eat to stay alive. They also gather pollen, which is their protein source, which they need to raise their brood. A bee will travel 1,600 round trips to produce 1 ounce of honey. So when you think about 16 ounces in the pound, you realize how many trips it takes away from the house to be able to produce this food for us. So don't spill it on the table at breakfast. To make 1 pound of honey, bees must visit around 2 million flowers and fly the distance equivalent to twice around the Earth. So about 50,000 miles of travel go into every 1 pound of honey. These are relentless little buggers. They work themselves to death, quite literally. but in their entire life's work, they produce 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey. Think about that. Consider that statistic with this, that in 2014, the average Mississippi hive produced 112 pounds of honey, the highest yield in the country on average. So there were a lot of 1/12 of a teaspoons of honey in 112 pounds, and that's for a single hive. So these bugs are amazingly industrious. They work themselves to death in a matter of 6 weeks in their lifespan. So as you get bees, as you kind of watch them work, you're going to be very impressed at what they're capable of. So when I got into beekeeping, 5 or 6 years ago, I had a friend who did it, and she said she was a beekeeper. And I said, great, what does that mean? Like, what do beekeepers do? Oh, you go in the hives and check the bees. And check them for what? What goes on in that box, and what are we supposed to be aware of? So tonight, the plan is to show you inside that box, show you what you should be aware of, and give you some ideas of what's going on inside the hive. In order to do that, let's start with the cast of characters that you're going to meet, the 3 different castes or 3 different types of bees in every box. By and large, the most populous of the types is the worker bee. This is the female bee on the left. Worker bees, oddly enough, do all the work. They take out the trash, they feed the babies, they take care of the queen, they build comb. They're the ones that go out and gather the nectar and pollen. They're the ones that make the honey and do everything that is necessary to keep the hive going. The one in the middle is the drone. This is the boy. This is the male whose only purpose in life is to mate with the queen. Otherwise, he sits around and eats food and watches everybody else work. You can insert your own joke about men here. Sounds like a good deal if your only task in life is to mate, but you really have to read the fine print before you take up that job, because once you mate with the queen, by the way, who's not in your hive, then you die in the middle of the act and kind of it's over very quickly. So those are drones' only purpose. The queen on the right, of course, is responsible for keeping the population going. So let's see what I mean here. There we see the queen in the middle. She has a long body. She has slightly different color. And we see all of the worker bees, all of the female bees attending to her. They feed her, they clean up after her. Everything that she needs, these worker bees are there to keep track of. Here you can see the queen again in the middle on some of her brood. Now that you're experts in spotting the queen, see if you can find the queen in this slide. Got it? Time's up. There she is. Bottom left-hand corner. All right. Hang on, I've got a chat request or chat something or other here. Ah, gotcha. So when a queen is doing her thing, she'll lay 12 to 1,500 eggs a day. More or less if she's doing it right. And when you look inside a cell, this little honeycomb, in the dead center spot of every hive should be one egg kind of standing on its edge. That is exactly what you want. And notice that every cell here has an egg in it. That is telling you that a queen is doing her job. Now, when a queen lays an egg, it'll be an egg for 3 days before it hatches. That's really important for you as a beekeeper, because one of the things that you need to do when you go into your hive is make sure you have a queen. If you don't have a queen, your goose is just about cooked, because there's going to be no way to keep the population going. So if you go in the box, you can either lay eyes on the queen, which tells you she's there, or if you see eggs in there, then you know that they were put there by a queen, as long as there's one egg kind of dead center in each cell. And early on, that's pretty much your task as a beekeeper, to go in there, first and foremost, make sure you have a queen or evidence of a queen. Now, if you go in the box and you see something like that, you think lots of eggs per cell, that's even better. No, that's way worse. If you see lots of eggs in the bottom of every cell, they were not put there by a queen. As it turns out, if you go for more than 2 weeks without a queen, or the hive is broodless for more than 2 weeks, workers actually are capable of laying eggs. There's a pheromone in the brood that suppresses the reproductive organs of the workers. Without a queen, those eggs were put there by workers who don't know how to lay and are not going to give you anything useful anyway. So if you see lots of eggs in a cell, that's called laying workers, and that spells pretty bad news for the hive. But as long as everything looks like that, you're in very good shape. After the eggs hatch in 3 days, you have larvae. Those are the little worm-shaped things in the cell. And the really tiny ones are the younger ones, and as they get older, they get more and more food, they get nice and fat. Now, if that's a worker bee, that'll be for about 8.5 days from the time the egg was laying. You'll have the larva, and eventually they will put a little wax cap over the cell, and you will have what we call capped brood that has now a little wax seal. And basically the little bees grow under there, and every little hole you see, or every little circle that is covered with wax has a bee under it. And 21 days after the queen put the egg in the cell, you'll have a new worker bee come out fully ready to go. Now notice this frame. This frame has a lot of solid brood from side to side. This is really what you want to see when you go in your hive. So one of the things that we know as a beginning beekeeper, you want to make sure that you have a queen, and then you want to make sure she's doing good work. How do you know? Check out the frame. By and large, that is a very solid pattern of brood under there. So you've got many thousands of bees ready to come out. There are occasional misses, but by and large, it's pretty good. Compare that now in your mind's eye to this. Notice the capped brood, the little wax seals are kind of sporadic here. We call it kind of a shotgun brood pattern, where you have a lot more misses than hits. That's a result of something that's not normal, or something that's not desirable, I should say, where perhaps the queen is getting old and maybe her sperm that is stored up is starting to run out. Or maybe there's some reason that the queen is not doing good work, because you're not going to get as many bees from that frame as you would in something like that. So as new beekeepers, you want to make sure you have a queen and that you see patterns that look more like that than like that. If the queen starts to fail, if she starts to get old, if there's any sort of reason that something that the hive needs a new queen, you may see a frame like this, and on the very bottom of it, you see those things hanging down that look like little peanuts. Those are actually queen cells. Those are what the bees will use to grow a new queen. They're much larger than everyone else. If you see them at the bottom of the frame, that's probably an indication that this hive is about ready to swarm. And we'll talk about swarms maybe in the next couple of lectures here. But those large cells at the very bottom are evidence that the hive is making a new queen. Now, talked about the queen, this is our worker. This is, again, the bees, the female bee that does all the work, from taking out the trash, bringing out the dead, feeding the young, making the wax, bringing in all of the food, all of the tasks that keep the hive alive. Now, here you see the bee on the flower. She's going to be sucking nectar out of the flower. That is the liquid that they will eventually turn into honey. And on her back legs, you see some yellow. That is the pollen. And the worker bees have little pollen baskets on their legs that they can gather this pollen and bring it back to the hive. And then they pass it from one bee to the next, and then they store it in the cells, and that's what becomes the food and the eventual honey that we will harvest in the middle of summer. So I want to show you a little clip now about how the bees find their way around, how they find flowers, how they kind of work together as a team to communicate and let each other know what is going on in the neighborhood so that they can gather their resources.
Honeybee workers are able to send complex messages to one another. In the wild, they sometimes nest out in the open, but mankind has persuaded them to live and store their honey in hives. The colony's heart is its queen. She is just a little bigger than her subjects and the mother of them all. In spring, when food stocks are low, the workers get busy collecting nectar. They have a remarkable method of telling one another where to find the most productive flowers. It's called the Waggle Dance. This returning bee has just found a new source of nectar and is going to tell others in the hive about it. First, she gathers an audience. To do that, she climbs on her sisters' backs and vibrates her abdomen. Now that she's got their attention, she begins her dance, using a code of movements that tell her fellow workers where her discovery lies. The duration of her waggle indicates the distance to the nectar source. The longer the waggle, the further the flower. And the angle at which she dances across the comb tells them the direction to the flower in relation to the sun. Her instructions are remarkably accurate and can pinpoint the location of a nectar source over 6 kilometers away. Some of her fellow workers set off immediately to find it. In one short season, the colony's workers will visit up to 500 million flowers and will make around 90 kilograms of honey. That is sufficient to sustain the whole colony through the coming winter when there is no nectar to be had.
So yes, they're quite busy, as you can see. Sometimes you might encounter bees in this incarnation. If you're a new beekeeper who doesn't have bees, this is exciting because it's a swarm hanging on a branch that you can shake in a box and get bees for free. If you're a beekeeper, it might be less exciting because it might mean one of your hives is divided and half of your workers flew into a tree. So it could be the best of times and the worst of times. A swarm is essentially a group of homeless bees. They're looking for a new place. So even though it might look scary hanging on your mailbox or hanging on a tree or whatever, by and large, this is as harmless as bees are ever going to be because they tend to be defensive rather than aggressive. They defend their home. These ones are still looking for a home, so they're just kind of hanging out. What should you do about a swarm? If you want bees, shake them in a box and kind of start a new hive. If you're worried about them, just wait a day or so and they'll fly off to their final destination. They're generally, I think one swarm in 30 might be aggressive, but by and large, they're going to leave you alone. All right, so at that point, I'll just pause here. Does anyone have any questions? Either call them out or put them in the chat box and we can see if anybody has any questions so far. I realize this is a bit of an artificial medium, but I think it's the best we've got for now. So no questions? We're still typing. Okay, if you think of any or have any along the way, just call them out. So we're beekeepers. We like honey. This is probably why many of us are doing what we're doing here. So um, let's talk a little bit about the honey that they're making. Your task over the first couple of months is going to be building your colonies very strong. You want to get a big colony that is going to be sustainable. You're going to get your nucleus colonies. You're going to feed them so they can draw out a lot of wax comb. In each box, essentially, you're going to have 10 frames that look like this. And you'll fill out 2 deeper boxes, and then you'll put a box on top for surplus honey. Before the bees can do anything, they need to make wax. So what you see on this slide is a frame with the black as a plastic foundation that has kind of a honeycomb design on it, but the white is the beeswax. Beeswax is always pure white. When it gets brown or when it gets yellow, that's because the bees don't wipe their feet when they come home, and they just dirty it from not wiping their feet. But in all of the frames, you're going to want to make sure that they're drawing out comb that looks like this. So this is a frame that is just starting to be drawn. As time goes on, you're going to see they draw it out even further. And in the middle of it, you see that white patch. That white patch is capped honey. So in other words, bees come in, they gather their nectar, they put it in the cell, and nectar has a very high moisture content. The bees have to dehydrate that honey or that nectar by waving their little wings and essentially drying it out. When it gets down to precisely the right level of humidity that they like, they put a little cap over it. And essentially that is like putting a lid on the jar telling you the honey is ready. Now on this frame, you see just a little patch of capped honey. The rest is nectar. When the frame gets like this, and you see most of the frame, say 90% of the frame is all capped, this is ready to harvest. So you go from this level of barely drawing out the frame, this level of slowly starting to cap it, to this level of fully capped, that is honey ready to take home. Now, you've got a frame full of capped honey. How do you get it out of there? One way to do it is like so. Here is my friend who's got a hot knife. This is an electric knife that gets warm enough that it will melt that wax capping, and you can run the knife down the wax, and it melts the capping off. You can slice it off, and then you have exposed honey there. You can see the very top of the frame is all honey still in the cell. Now you've got to get it out of there. You can get a device called an extractor, which is essentially a centrifuge. You put frames in there, you turn it on and spin it around, and the honey comes out of the little valve at the bottom. You can put it into a bucket, get a paint strainer at Lowe's for cheap, and you have honey that's ready to go into the jar. When you're looking to get extracting equipment, I'll sometimes see all these fancy, expensive metal strainers. They're great, except that they clog up really quickly. So my recommendation is to get a bucket like this, put a paint strainer in it, and kind of squeeze it out. And you save a lot of money, and it's something that's not likely to be a problem for you. So you strain the honey, put it into the jar, and that is the final product straight from the hive. Questions at this point? All right. I have a little counter on here that tells me the number of people here, and I haven't run anybody off yet, so I take that all as a good sign. So the question is now, to beekeep or not to beekeep? If you want to get serious about this, where do you start? What do you do? My first bit of advice to you is to read. Get as much information as you can, but try to get it from reputable sources. Of course, like with everything else, the internet is the great wild west of information. It is the best of times and it is the worst of times. And there's some great stuff out there, and there is some Looney Tune stuff that will not help you. So I recommend several books. And as I said, if you email me, I have a little reading list of places to start that are just my personal recommendations. There are others, but these are sources that'll give you something to look at that kind of give you a good start in figuring out what you're doing. Attend bee club meetings. Having said that, commercial time. This Thursday, there will be the regular monthly meeting of the Pine Belt Beekeepers Association. It's at 7 o'clock and it's going to be held online. The link that you use to get into this meeting will work for Thursday night's meeting. This particular Thursday, we have Dr. Jeff Harris speaking, and he is the Mississippi State Extension Specialist for beekeeping. He is probably knows as much as anybody in the state on bees, and it always offers interesting presentations. His presentation this week is on growing a nuke, essentially information for very first year beekeepers. So that is Thursday night at 7. You already have the link. Come there, ask questions, see what Dr. Harris has to say, and that will kind of support what we're doing with these few sessions. But attend these meetings regularly. You can get to know the people in your community. Beekeeping is not a solitary activity. Get to know people who have answers, people who can help you. There are a lot of crazy people who love to talk about bees, and many of them pretty friendly. So come there and they can really help you with the inevitable millions of questions you have just starting out. Find a mentor, find somebody who knows something about keeping bees, someone who's done it for a while, and follow the person around, bug them, ask them lots of questions, let them show you into the hives. I have somebody that you can call who's willing to help you out. This is invaluable. There's only so much information you can get from reading. There's only so much you can get from YouTube. Getting to look into a box is an amazing experience. Do it with somebody who knows what he or she is doing. Do it with somebody who sells bees as opposed to buys bees every year. If you have somebody who buys bees every year, it probably means the person's killing their bees and may not be your best source of information. So find somebody who's been doing it a while and seems to have success at it. Find a good spot for your bees. One of the documents I will send you if you email me is a publication put out by Mississippi State about finding a good spot for your apiary. You don't need hundreds of acres of land. You can do it in the middle of town as long as you keep them in a place that's not going to hold a lot of water, not going to attract a lot of moisture, and is going to be generally out of your way. But bees are going to find their way around, and you don't need to do a lot for them to give them a place to be successful. Order your bees like now, soon. Another document I will send you is a list of all of the people who sell nucleus colonies in the state, and or at least who were certified to do so. Get on their list soon, because people will be making their splits here in the next week or two, and the nucleus colonies will be ready by about the middle of April, middle of April, depending on the weather, and they go fast. So make sure you get on somebody's list soon. Now is a good time before you have bees to prepare your equipment, excuse me. This is the time to make sure you have your boxes. This is to make sure everything is built and put together. And again, we're going to talk about equipment here in a little while, but now's the time. One of the suppliers I like is called Man Lake, M-A-N-N Lake, L-A-K-E. And typically at the beginning of March, they run a big sale. So I would say in the next week or so, check their website and you might be able to get some deals if you can wait till maybe next week. So generally speaking, a beehive looks like this. You've got some kind of bottom board. You see at the very bottom, there's a stand. Now, Man Lake will sell you a stand for lots of money. I would say get cinder blocks. They cost $1.58 a piece at Lowe's, and I know because I just bought a bunch of them. Put the hive a couple about 6-8 inches off the ground. The hive will have a bottom board, and you can get either a screen bottom or a solid bottom, and that's just a matter of personal preference. You see the box above it tends to be a little larger than the boxes above that. We call that a deep super, and that is 9 5/8 inches tall. And typically a beehive is going to include 2 boxes just like that, 2 deep supers, and then 2 honey supers above it, what we call mediums. And again, I'll send you a handout that has all of this written down, so don't feel like you have to take notes at this point. In every box, typically you have 2 options of box sizes. You can get 10 frame equipment or 8 frame equipment. What the difference is sort of self-explanatory there. 8 frame equipment is popular because bee boxes get really heavy. If you have 10 frames that have solid honey on them, that gets quite heavy to schlep around. 8 frames, or the bees are just as happy with, and they're a little lighter to move. So whatever you choose is entirely up to you. If you choose standard 10 frame equipment, typically one has 2 deep supers on the bottom for the queen to raise her brood. And then above that, you can have honey supers, and that is where the bees will put surplus honey that you can later extract. At the very top of the hive, you see an outer cover and an inner cover. I don't know anybody in South Mississippi who uses inner covers. That if you'd like to, you can, but if you'd like to save yourself some money, inner covers don't do you much good down here. An outer cover is your top. If you just have a piece of wood, you can use that. You can get various kinds in the bee supply houses, but you just need a lid to put on top of the box. Now we get to the dark topic of how much all of this is going to cost you. And I updated this list today, and I had previously had information here from 2018. And I can tell you, Man Lake is not shy about updating their prices. Everything has gone up about 25% since I updated this last in 2018. So essentially, the cost of your equipment, just to give you an idea getting started, if you get a bottom board, it's going to cost you about $28.50. The 2 deep bodies, 2 deep hive bodies there, are going to cost you about $39.90. 2 medium honey supers to put above it to catch your honey supers. And I recommend 2 for your first year. Subsequent years, you'll need more, but 2 supers at the beginning will probably do the trick. That's another $30. 10 frames per box. So you'll need 20 deep frames, that'll be 73, 20 medium frames, 68, a migratory cover, just a piece of wood for on top, another $18, and a queen excluder that is an optional piece of equipment. It's up to you if you like it, want it, another $8. To outfit yourself for 1 hive, the equipment's going to cost you about $258. Now, I say 1 hive, but it is very, very, very strongly recommended when you get started that you start with at least 2 or 3 hives. So think about that times 2. Why do I say start with 2 hives? If you have 2 hives, you can compare how they're growing. And if you have a particularly strong hive and a particularly weak hive, you can share resources from the strong hive to keep the weaker one alive. So if you have 1 hive and you accidentally kill the queen, then that hive is pretty much done, unless, I mean, you can find a new queen elsewhere. But if you have 1 hive and the queen is gone, you can take eggs from a weaker one and put it in there and rehabilitate it possibly. So it's generally recommended that you start with 2 hives just to kind of increase your chances of success. So that's about your initial investment there. In addition to that, You're going to need a hive tool to work the hive. You're going to need protective gear, your hooded jacket, um, your leather gloves, and leather gloves are fine. You can also use like nitrile gloves, like cleaning gloves that have the thick plastic. That's all a matter of personal preference. The thing that you do not want to forget, though, is your smoker. The smoker is going to be your biggest piece of safety equipment. Because I am a slow learner, several times in my life I've thought, I'm just going to peek my head in this hive for just a couple of seconds. I'm not going to bother to smoke them. Invariably, that proves to be a mistake and something that I thought, you know, I should have learned this the last time I did this and achieved the same result. So smoke your hives just a little bit. You don't have to create a big forest fire, but a little smoke kind of interferes with their ability to communicate with one another, and that makes them a lot more friendly to work. So make sure you have a smoker. And then you need the bees themselves. Nucleus Colony will be usually a box of 5 frames that'll have a brand new queen, it'll have eggs, it'll have all of the stages of bees, and then a frame of honey for food. And that's what you're going to get around the middle of April. That should have the resources to sustain you in your beekeeping career. And they run, I've seen, between $135 and $175. If you look in the bee catalogs, they will often sell package bees. I can't think of any strategic advantage whatsoever in South Mississippi to buying package bees. One, they're more expensive, and 2, they come at a great disadvantage because there is no wax comb that comes with a package. They literally send you a box of bees in the mail. And at least with the Nucleus Colony, you have a bunch of wax comb that the bees can get started with. So you're at a much greater advantage to start with a Nucleus Colony to begin your beekeeping career. All right, keep learning. Don't ever just assume that you know what you need to about bees. As I said, talk to your mentor, talk to other people about bees, keep reading, do what you have to do to really put yourself in the best position for success. And part of that means visiting your bees. Don't just drop the box out in the back and say, okay, there we go, I'm a beekeeper. Make sure you visit them, make sure that they're going strong, make sure you know why they're not going strong, and ask lots of questions along the way. This is something we're going to talk about later on in the course of this little series. This is public enemy number 1. This is the great Satan of beekeeping. This is a mite called Varroa Destructor, and its name says it all. This will be a little creature that you will contend with your entire beekeeping career. It's a parasite that has been in this country for about 35 years now, and it is on every continent except Australia. If you have bees, you have this mite. If you don't control this mite, it will kill your colony without question. So you need to find some clever way to manage this, and we can talk about that as we go on, but that'll be something that you're going to want to be aware of in your beekeeping career. That's the mite on a bee. Typically, they latch onto the bottom side of a bee. So don't look into your colony and assume that if you don't see them, they are not there. They're typically underneath the bee or under capped cells. So if you get to the point where you ever see a mite in your colony, there are probably more there than you can imagine, and your hive is probably dead. So not seeing them is not an indication that they're not there. You see a colony here on the right side with all of those boxes. Left untreated, mites can wipe out something that big and that strong. So make sure that you're aware of how to deal with those, and we'll talk about that a little later on. There's someone working a hive. She's got a veil on, she's got her smoke, so that's being safe and smart. Wearing black is not safe and smart. Bees are attracted to dark colors and not in a good way. So if you're going to work hives, generally speaking, make sure that you wear light colors. And that is a picture of yours truly here on a particularly cold February day. The bees were just looking for body heat, and apparently I had some. So there were no beekeepers stung in the making of this picture, but you want to notice stuff like that before you get into the truck. There's the lady of the hour, and that's all I've got. So I'm going to stop sharing here. I know we whizzed through a lot of information very quickly here. So at this point, I would just like to ask you, what are your questions? Surely you've got millions of them, so I will open the floor, and if I don't know the answer, we have some distinguished beekeepers here who will be happy to jump in. So what can I do for you?
How do you go about keeping them from spraying down your street? Because I live inside of town.
That's a good question. You know what? Every time I call, they never answer the phone. So that has been a futile pursuit. Don't worry too much about the mosquito trucks. They generally come out at night when the bees are in their boxes. So their chances are they're not going to get you too badly. If you have hives that are right on the street where they're blowing into them, then you might have problems. But if your hives are kind of in the backyard or off the street a little ways, the mosquito truck is not going to bother you. But if anybody else knows how to get them to answer the phone, let me know, because I have not had any success with it. Robin.
I do. I can help you with that. All you have to do is go to your standard county barn beat, whatever beat you're in, speak to the office. They'll have forms for the mosquito trucks, and all you do is sign your name on it that says, I do not want this address sprayed. Your best chance is to go to the actual office itself on their lunch break between 11 and 12. I drove the mosquito truck one summer as a side hustle, and that's how we handled, so I can answer that personally.
Thank you very much. That's great information.
Absolutely.
Did you kill a lot of mosquitoes? All right.
I don't know. I think, honestly, I just pissed them off.
I have heard that you just kill the things that eat mosquitoes. So it's more cosmetic than, I don't know. I'm not that kind of scientist, or any kind really. But that's the best information I've had yet on the subject. So thank you. Anybody?
Ed, what is the inner cover used for?
Rick, what's that?
What is the inner cover used for? You said in the South, we don't need an inner cover.
There are times, I guess, when they can be somewhat useful, like, this is probably more information than you need at this point. Well, I guess probably the biggest thing is if you use the telescoping covers that go over the side. If you put an inner cover on there, it makes it easier to get those things off, because the bees will glue together just about anything that they can get their little bee paws on. So if you have an inner cover, that prevents them from really kind of gluing that thing down in a way that makes it hard to get off. That's probably the biggest advantage of using them.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yes. You had your deep supers, and then you had your medium supers where your honey lives. Is the way to tell that what's in the hive, what's in the cells, is honey versus a new baby bee? Is it just the location of where it's at in the hive?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And this is one of these things that's hard to imagine, but the minute you see inside a hive, it'll all become very clear. The brood nest tends to be this sort of like oval shape in the middle of the box. When bees start putting honey in, they tend to put it on the outer frames, and they start growing their brood in the middle in this kind of like three-dimensional oval shape. It'll be very clear what becomes the brood and what is the honey. So usually on a good frame, you'll
Okay.
see the honey on the outer sides of it. There'll be a little band of pollen, which is always like various colors, usually gold, or sometimes you'll see red. And then in the center of the frame, you tend to see the brood and the larva. Good question. So in terms of the configuration of the hive, as I said, you can either get 2 deep boxes to give the queen her space, or if some people prefer to use all medium-sized boxes. And the advantage there again is medium-sized boxes are a little lighter. If you do that, use 3 medium boxes instead of 2 for your brood chamber. And then everything above that will be for surplus honey. Everything above the 3rd medium box is honey that you can take.
And Ed, going back to Robin's question, that's the purpose of the queen excluder, right? To ensure that you don't have brood in the honey supers?
Right, so the queen excluder, one of the ways to use that is to put that between where the brood chamber is, either the 2 deep boxes, you put a queen excluder on top, and it's this metal mesh essentially where the worker bees can pass through it, and the queen bee is just a little too fat to get up through it, so that she won't get up there and start laying brood. So it's a good way to make sure that when you're extracting honey, that you don't accidentally take the queen with you and kill the colony. Some people like them. Some people say that they cost you too much honey. It's just a matter of personal preference. If you just have 1 or 2 hives, it's up to you. I have more than that, so it would take me way too long to extract if I had to go through every frame of a bunch of boxes to find the queen to make sure she's not up there. So again, it's a matter of personal preference, but yes, the queen excluder is supposed to keep the queen from getting up into your honey box. I recommend too the metal ones. You can get these little cheap plastic ones. I really hate those. They are not of particularly high quality. The bees will glue them down in an annoying sort of way. Get the metal bound ones that are just metal all around. Some of them have like wood sides that are just expensive, I think, for the sake of being expensive. If you're going to do a queen excluder, I recommend the solid metal ones. Man, you guys are shy. Not a lot of questions going on here.
Ed, could you talk about the difference between a screen bottom board and a solid bottom board?
Yeah, so a solid bottom board is exactly that. It just has, it's a solid floor where there are no gaps in it. A screen bottom board is useful for kind of controlling the temperature of the hive in the summer. It's useful that you can get a little breeze under it to help cool the hive. And the screen bottom board is also somewhat helpful for controlling the varroa mites, because when the bees have any sort of trash, it'll fall to the bottom of the hive and it'll go through the screen. So there won't be a bunch of trash that ends up on the bottom of the board that can be a little breeding ground for like hive beetles and varroa mites. So it's a matter of preference. And most of the time they'll come with like some sort of insert that's almost like the political signs that you see at election time, that you can slide in a screen bottom so that you can close it off for the winter. If you're worried about getting some sort of Arctic chill into the hive in the winter, you can always put that insert in to cover them up to keep the hive from getting too cold. Greg, Jim, do you use screened or solid? Do you have a preference either way? Rick?
Not really. I've got about 50-50. I've got a lot of screen, and I got a lot of solid bottom, and I can't see any difference in production, any the hive health, the honey production. I don't see much difference one way or the other. I just whichever one I've got, I just use them, and I don't have a real preference.
Yeah, I've got some of both and about the same result. Jim, have you noticed any difference?
I believe mine that have the screen bottom boards are a little more hygienic, because about once or twice a year I'll have to take the solid bottom board and just scrape stuff off that's adhered to it. It tends to hold moisture more, and so I like the screen boards better.
One of the things that's a very important point with the moisture, when you set your hives up, you want them to be about as even as they can be, or if you have a solid board, maybe leaning a little towards the front so that if there's any moisture in there, it will run out, because you don't want to have a lot of moisture collecting in the hive. That's going to be bad news for the bees. Good question. Other things?
Has anybody seen any evidence of swarming yet?
Greg?
I have seen some swarm cells in one of my hives. It's a little early for that, but the bees don't know that. But I have seen some swarm cells, and I think they've already swarmed because the population went down greatly. So I think they swarm. I don't know where they're going. I don't know if they're going to survive, but I think we're about to get into the swarming season.
I caught a swarm about the size of, 2 handfuls of bees, and it lasted all of about 3 days after I caught it. And that was about a month ago. So that was like weirdly early, and I'm not sure what that was about, but it didn't survive.
Yeah. Now I know where one of my hives went.
Yep.
No give backs. Jim's my neighbor, so he sets up swarm traps around all my bees.
As a newcomer, if I understand this correctly, for your first hive, you need to have everything together by April, and make arrangements for to have your queen and your starter kit by that time. Correct or wrong?
I would get on the list pretty soon to order your nucleus colonies. You might, I would say give Man Lake another week or so to see if they're running any specials. But try to get your equipment together sooner than you think. You don't want to have your box of bees sitting there waiting for you to put the hive together. The more time you allow yourself, the better you're going to be. Plus, if you're going to paint it, give it a week or two to let the fumes go away, and just be ready.
I live in Lamar County. Do you know anybody down here that's building hives?
Building boxes? Is that what you're for, Charles?
I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Greg Dunn's brother lives out on Black Creek, right, going to Columbia. He builds and sells all kind of equipment. Discount Pharmacy in Columbia has really good prices, a lot of equipment. He gets a lot of his stuff through Man Lake, actually. And last year we bought frames that were cheaper with him than they were through the catalogs. But Greg, you might talk about your brother's stuff. I've seen it advertised on Facebook.
Yeah, he does have a Facebook presence, and he does build good quality boxes. He builds all the components: bottom boards, the deeps, the mediums, the frames, the lids. But he sells a little bit of all of it. And like I said, he is out on the Enon Road out there, about halfway between Hedgesburg and Columbia, right off of 98 on Enon Road. And like I said, I've got his phone number. If you want to write it down, you can give him a call if you want to talk to him. And
what was his name? What was his name?
Terry, Terry, Dunn.
Okay.
And it's his cell phone is 601-441-4377. And he'll be glad to talk to. Excuse me.
Allow me my senior moment, please.
Sure.
601-441-4377.
That's correct.
All
But he'll be glad to talk to you, tell you what he's got, and give you prices, and send you a price list or anything. But yep, he does pretty good work. That's where I get all of my stuff these days. So
okay. I figured it might be, if I was going to buy them from somebody local, help them hecking these people out of town.
Exactly. I like that.
I will say too, some people are woodworkers and like to build their own equipment. I strongly recommend that you at least get one box from a store and take very precise measurements, because one of the things that's going to be important to you is the concept of bee space. The ideal space between anything in the hive is between is probably about 5/16 of an inch between frames and between various places. Anything smaller than about 1/4 of an inch, the bees are going to propolis. Propolis is this residue that they get from trees, and it's like this bee glue. You will grow to hate it. It'll get all over your hive tools and your clothes, and if you get it all over your clothes, throw them away and buy new ones because it's not coming off. But any small area below 1/4 of an inch, they're going to propolis. Anything larger than about 3/8 of an inch, they're going to build burr comb, this excessive wax in places where you don't want it to be. And if you come to the presentation on Thursday with Dr. Harris for a regular meeting on Thursday at 7, he's got some slides of beekeepers who put boxes on without frames in it. So they put an empty box on and say, I'll come back tomorrow, and that never happens. And when bees are going real strong, they build a lot of comb really fast, and they will fill a box in a sort of disastrous way for you if you give them way too much space. But if you get some equipment, take precise measurements, you can try to replicate that. And realize too that not all of bee companies have standardized equipment. So it's often better to buy from one place exclusively, just to make sure it all fits together in a way that makes most sense to the bees. What else can we do for you? I guess we've been here for about an hour, so if anybody wants to check out, I certainly understand, but I also know that there are lots of questions typically when one first gets started off in this endeavor. I'm glad you're here. I hope you come back next week for whatever may befall us there. Remember again too, this Thursday at 7, Dr. Harris will be giving a speech on keeping your nuke alive. And it's worth your time. It's going to touch on some of the things that I did tonight, only in a much more intelligible way. So join us with that. The same link will get you there, and the same link will be good for all of these classes going forward, and we'll meet for every Tuesday for the rest of the month. If you have any questions in between, feel free to send me a note. We can, if I don't have an answer, we'll get somebody who can get you a better idea. So other things. Thanks for all of you for coming. That's all I've got. I'll hang on for a while if you have questions. When the last man or woman is standing, I will go away. So if there's nothing else, I will see you next time.
Thank you, Ed. Good program, bud.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming.
Oh, you
You guys
bet.
haven't seen any of this.
It was great.
Thanks, Jean-Claude. Thanks for stopping by.
At the rate I keep losing bees this winter, I need to attend every class I can.
So far, I've had a pretty good winter. Last year, I got creamed. So I was, there's no, I didn't do anything differently this year, but last year they were, more of them died. This year, I lost very few so far, but there's still hope that I could kill a few more before I have to split them all this week.
Last year I didn't lose any. I went through the whole year without losing a hive. I mean, and this year, this winter, I lost about half.
We've had the opposite winters, but yeah, I mean, it's false sense of security.
Amazing what difference a mile makes, huh?
Yeah, just when you think it's safe in beekeeping, they will always surprise you.
I did talk to Darren Strauss week before last week, I guess, or week before, and he said he thinks he's going to have queen cells as early as the next week. He said 1st of March. So
yeah, I think Roy said Thursday, like this Thursday. So it's going to be getting time to do the splits here.
Yeah.
So I've got to start feeding. I had a lot of food in my hives at the beginning of the winter, and then they've been just going through quite a lot of it now. So make sure that you you're feeding, otherwise it could get even worse. but they're packing in the pollen pretty hard.
I did make a discovery this past week. I finally found out what that bright red pollen is that they bring in. It's just so glowing bright red. It's somebody that's supposedly new told me it was henbit.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
It's really stunning when you see it.
Yeah, oh, it's gorgeous. And I have a lot of henbit and it's purple flowers, so I don't know where the red pollen comes, but yeah.
I don't know, but they're always fascinating just to see what they get into.
All righty, guys. Well, I'm gonna drop off. I hope to be on Thursday night. We're gonna run over to Alabama, so if I miss Jeff's presentation, Greg, you're on point to take all the notes, figure out what happened to our hives this winter.
You got it.
It's actually a pre-recorded presentation, so if you can't make it, I'll find some way to send it to you. It's a huge file, so I'm not sure how to do that, but we'll find
Maybe
some
zip
way.
it, do a zip it somehow, maybe, or something.
Yeah, I'll figure it out, but if you can't make it, don't worry.
Okay, good deal. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for stopping by.
Oh, you bet. I'll see y'all later.
See ya. Anybody else have any questions? All right. So nice to see you. Thanks for stopping by. If there's nothing else, I will sign off and see you next week.
See you next week.
Talk to you later, Ed.